Well, happy playoff Monday here for some of the teams. Some of the teams in the XFL. We'll talk about it today. USFL Week 2. Exciting stuff coming down the way. I have with me today sad. It's okay. A sad Pat Ruffino representing his St. Louis Battlehawks. Pat, checking in with you. Welfare check. Pat, how are you doing?
I'm okay because the speculation tweets are beginning with AJ McCarron putting out his tweet about wanting to play with that man next year.
You think AJ back in the XFL?
I mean, I think he'll. The cool thing about AJ, and we've talked about this ad nauseum, is that the world is at his feet. So he doesn't have like if I'm him, I kind of wait till that middle of training camp. Okay, like when the Vikings had Teddy Bridgewater get hurt, you know what I mean? Like let me choose the NFL team I want to go to. So
Kind of like pulling Odell Beckham there. I like that. I'll choose. I'll tell you which teams I want to play for.
don't call me, I'll call you. I love that.
That's good. Well, we're here today. We have everyone checking in. Chris, we got Matt here. Exciting times. I was very rowdy on Twitter last night. Very exciting. I don't like going to the press box for the Sea Dragons games. I like being in the field for that. I will officially be in DC in our nation's capital next weekend. I bought a standing room only ticket in the Beer Snake area when the tickets went on sale. Listener Seth helped me out with the code, and then I waited. I have my flight purchased on Miles last night, so we are locked in. Pat, exciting times. We'll talk about the St. Louis of it all, but Sea Dragons in the North Championship game against the DC Defenders. Do we even have a chance?
I mean, yeah, because here's something I saw last night. Matt Sexton, friend of the show, going in for the touchdown, right? What happened? I think it was the gentleman's name is Kelvin Knight. I forget Kelvin Wright. Does that sound right? So he obviously, the points thing kind of got figured out. They got their comms guys on the sideline saying, "Hey, we're good," and he still, did the reverse Don Beebe thing from the Super Bowl on Leon Lett. So to me, that says enough about the team that they definitely have a chance. And we saw it with the Generals last year in the USFL that 9-1 doesn't mean anything. But I do think Von Hutchins and Reggie Barlow are a way better team than because obviously last year with the Stars, it was just getting Case Cookus getting into his groove. So there are similarities there, but 9-1 doesn't mean anything. And not to sound cliche, any given Sunday or Saturday in this case, I believe.
I didn't like that. I didn't like Matthew Sexton, friend of the show. I mean, Matthew was kind of flexing on Seattle coming in there. Obviously we didn't hear the broadcast with Dean, also a friend of the show. I'm sure he had some, is that the XFL rule now that you can't fumble it into the end zone? Ridiculous. That should have been a touchback. We were all screaming about that. Very, very exciting times there. I still don't know. I know Brian Stoll sent out the email about why the Battlehawks are eliminated. Did it really come down to 1 point? Was that, do you understand how the playoffs worked?
I do. My problem is this. I think every time I think I understand, a new thing comes out. So maybe this is my slow brain or anything because I'm getting it, I'm reading it, and then I have 5 other people who are texting me or messaging me who are the casual Battlehawks fans, so what's going on? And I'm taking, what Mike says, what other people on Twitter says, then Brian sends something out, and they're like, well, ESPN said this, and I'm like, bro, I don't know at this point. I'm gonna be honest. Let's wait till the game's over. But my girlfriend brought up a really good point, and she was at work, talking to people, and people were talking about the XFL St. Louis, and they're like, so why aren't they getting in? And she's like, well, what do you mean? She's like, it's a tiebreaker, but what are you talking about? So it deterred a lot of casual people to where it's we live, breathe, make a little bit of money from doing this, all that good stuff, where it's some dude who just got done working 56 hours a week, building roofs is like, dude, this team's 7-3. Why are they not in the playoffs? This is stupid. And I think it could have turned off a lot of people to the, I don't want to say absurdity, but just the move, the very fluidity of the playoff situation.
Yeah, I mean, we're still having Jared in the chat here. Max, like, we're still talking about like we didn't, and I had producer Max texting me, and I told Mike because I had people DMing me. I'm like, I've been drinking Rainier since 2 o'clock. Like, I'm not the guy to be asking about this right now. Except obviously when they announced it in the stadium, it was good. It was good. It was exciting. The South a little bit more locked up. Are you pleased to see Arlington back again with Houston? Is that an exciting matchup in the South?
I mean, third time's the charm for Arlington. If Arlington won, it wouldn't surprise me at this point. You get to the point, Luis Perez, like they were running kind of a stale offense yesterday. Don't show too much. Obviously, Brandon didn't play yesterday. Based off the playoff structure, that's just the way it is. There's a lot of things in life that aren't fair, and being a St. Louis Battlehawks fan today is not fair, despite what you're doing. But it kind of sucks. But the team does look better with Perez. Obviously, Davion Smith didn't play and whatnot, so it could be a good game. It could be a blowout. I think everyone's tuned into the North Division. We'll watch the South Division, but I like as far as a ratings perspective, if they had a major drop off in ratings from the Houston Arlington game, that would not surprise me. Especially there's 6 games next week. If that was number 6 on the slate of spring football, that would not surprise me.
Well, yeah. So it's going to be the Saturday game here, and I can pull this up. We got Renegades at Houston at 7 p.m. Eastern, ESPN2, and then obviously the Seattle game, DC on the ESPN proper there. But I could see that being low. And I wish we could go live tomorrow. I've seen the prelims for the USFL weekend numbers. I think it's going to be fun tomorrow. I think if we could have done that. Max has a comment here. It almost could be St. Louis not getting in. Like, we could fix this next year. You might have to be the sacrificial lamb where the Battlehawk fans are so outraged that they do get rid of the divisional playoff and they do, the division winners and then the top 2 points, whatever after that to get in. Would you like to see, I know Andy and I have been kind of harping about this for weeks, see a changed XFL playoffs, whatever next year?
That would be good for this year, but do we know if it'll be good for next year? I don't want to say case by case basis, but I think, what happens next year if someone else gets screwed, I don't know what the fix is. Like right now, it's easy for me to get on my soapbox and be like, St. Louis should be in, this is nonsense. But what if, there are a bunch of teams, like what if the next tier of teams all went 5-5, what are we doing here? Then we have to do this whole tiebreaker again versus St. Louis goes 5-5 last year with all 5 of their wins coming to division. And then Seattle went 5-5, and all 5, they just beat up on the South. We're going to run into problems. I think maybe a little bit more education and clarification on the tiebreakers could be good. But what Max is saying isn't outrageous. I just don't think there's a perfect scenario in this. I think you're going to hurt someone's feelings somewhere.
Well, because I was pulling this up here, like this Jake guy, whatever, on Twitter, he's like, this is a travesty, the holy hell. It's like, because no sub 500 team has ever won the division. Like, this happens in the NFL. It happened. Washington Commanders 2 seasons ago, won the NFC East. It happens. I don't think it's a bad look. I think it's the numbers, and that's the way it worked out. Like, I don't think this is a stain on the league that stuff, that the Battlehawks aren't in, and that potentially the Renegades, whatever. I just think that's nonsense. I think that's something that people are picking on just to kind of pick on the XFL.
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility in an 8-team league, and that I think he tweeted that that's something I'll give credence to, but. Right now in the USFL, I think there might be a sub 500 team making it because the Stars don't look as good as I was tuned into that game yesterday. The Stars don't look that good, and Cookus is clearly hurt. He's gonna keep playing, but he's not 100%. So there's no Brian Scott, the Case Cookus drop off. There's Case Cookus is some guy we haven't really heard of, and badly. So we might be dealing with this in about 7 weeks in the USFL. So it's pretty I mean, I don't know their tiebreakers. Maybe they're different. Maybe they have a better system. Well, maybe they're just like, we should start. Maybe because of what the XFL happened, they're starting to prep for it a little bit. Like, let's not be that guy type thing, you know. So
I think it was also just hard that it was so convoluted last week with the ESPN broadcast and bringing Dean on, and then this week, like, I think that was the problem. I know that Mike has been on the phone, talking to the league and figuring that out. It's that there was so much, excuse me, confusion. It was such a in the minutia thing, and like I had Dean on the show, and I know Dean likes talking about it, but it's such a thing that's over people's heads. I just think it work. Unless you're the hardcore of the hardcore spring football fan, you're not, whatever.
And even if you are, like, you're still you still can't just look at them like a text message from someone. You have to, like, for me, like, I'm a pretty visual guy. Like, I have to write it down, and like, it's like if I'm getting these texts and I'm at dinner or I'm at working, like, I don't have my notepad in my back pocket, like, and if people are asking me, they want a simple answer, like, so are we winning or are we not? Like, what's going on, guy? Like, and I felt bad I couldn't provide a text message worth of explanations to people. But I don't poo-poo the league for this. It's out of all the things to get like on the high horse about, like, the spring football wars, this situation is like the least of my concerns. It sucks. Like, obviously, I can't go to a game next week. I can't cover a game. But overall, like, this is kind of the least of my worries at this point.
And we're going to talk USFL in here. I want to talk San Antonio not making it. It does feel like the animosity right now is at an all-time high. It's very, very interesting. We were in the chat yesterday, and even people asking about, what is the USFL? What are the breakers? Met with, harassment of, you don't know enough about this. It's a really weird time. Like I said, I'm glad. Wish I could go live tomorrow to talk about the ratings. We have to work, but it's interesting right now, the world we live in.
Yeah, I mean, it's a semblance of it's parallel to society. If you don't like this thing, you're against that thing, and I mean, I don't know, like, it's trying to go back, like, to who started it, and I don't even know who started. It's kind of like the Hatfields and the McCoys, right? Like, who fired the first shot? Like, because in my mind, there's two things that I think started this whole thing of animosity, and like, I think it was the Rod Woodson thing. I think kind of ruffled a lot of feathers. I don't want to put the blame on Rod Woodson, because I really don't want to put the blame on anyone. I think the Rod Woodson thing kind of irked a lot of people in the USFL, and then I think I think I can pin it to like one or two people on Twitter who were very anti USFL, and like, I don't want to say they started it, but then it's like, it kind of kicked back real hard, which is like natural of society, right? Like, if you're one way for so long and you go so far one way, then people are like, well, I don't really like this, so I'm going to go the exact opposite. And then everyone's like, oh my God, how is, this going on? So, I mean, at this point, I covered both leagues. I don't think I'm biased. Some people say I'm biased to the Battlehawks because there's a team in my location. I mean, that makes sense, if you really think about it. But in the end, I'm going to cover both leagues. I literally put out videos for both leagues, cover both leagues. I've actually written more USFL articles this year than I have XFL articles. So, I mean, I'm going to cover both leagues, and I hope both leagues are here to stay, because in the end, what is it, 800 jobs per league? So if you celebrate that, yeah, Mike is right. Controversy does create cash. But if you celebrate one of these leagues failing, you're essentially cheering the fact that 800 people are out of employment.
Well, and not only the players, staff and social media and kind of all this kind of stuff. We say here we have the chat always makes me laugh sometimes. What did you think? It came down to Mr. Automatic Romo for the San Antonio not making the field goal, one field goal away from our boy Jay's team being in there. What did you make San Antonio just being on the outside looking in?
I mean, they had plenty of opportunity. It's like you can kind of look back on every team that they were within one score of a couple games. Obviously, starting it off in the season with that Battlehawks win. You know, we all champion St. Louis, and I definitely will as well. But I mean, we played to the level of our opponent multiple times. Like, you know, that DC, even our first DC game. Granted, AJ threw a pick. That first pick, you know, that was a pick six. Like, if that guy stays on his feet, I think it was Gary Jennings. I think it was Gary Jennings. If he stays on his feet, that's a 9-yard gain, you know, and that pick six, you know, there's a reverse on that score. And then, like, you know, it just kind of Seattle, we came out flat. That second DC game was really the only one I felt like we didn't have a chance in. But I mean, you could talk about it to any team. Like, San Antonio should have won. What is he saying, Max? Yeah, no, 100%. Like, I think he lost his NFL job with that kick, and it's unfortunate because of how good he was for the majority of the year. And you know, I don't have his stats in front of me, but like, I remember every time there was a new like 50-yard field goal, it was John Parker Romo and whatnot. It was between him and Matt McCrane for a while, or two of the better kickers in the XFL. So Hines Ward made a lot of great strides as a coach, because let's be honest, he was a rookie coach. I think if we can go back, I would, and I was very vocal about this. I'm a Reed Sinnett homer, you know, fellow Reeds unite type thing. But you know, they went with Cone, and Cone really only had 2 good games. Like yesterday, he played pretty decent, but they couldn't get into the end zone. Kalen Balaj getting hurt. I mean, that Brahmas team. And granted, we don't really know what they're going to look like next year, but I'd like to see them get another quarterback. And that's nothing against Cone, but there was a lack of development, and it felt like he was very stagnant. And that offense really only moved with Reed Sinnett, and then he broke his foot. So because they're 3-7, Arlington's 4-6, like, that margin of victory or that margin of error for them, like, to get them into the playoffs. But in the end, like, Arlington, air quote, was the better team in the South on paper. So I'm glad they, you know, are getting to play this Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, it really, I'm trying to think, like, I guess at the end of the world, it comes down. I'm happy. It would have been nice to have, obviously, St. Louis in here. I think Seattle is fine. DiNucci is one of the faces of the league. I know McCarron's been fighting for that as well. But, you know, do you think that having DiNucci in that position, beating out AJ, just in terms of like a PR, and like we're able to talk about Ben now, is that a fine step down from AJ, who has kind of really gotten a lot of the focal view just this season as, hey, look at this guy choosing the league and everything?
Well, it's not only AJ, it's the whole team, right? Like, because of, you know, obviously with everything with Kroenke. So for them to bring a championship to the city, you could have ran with that storyline. They filled the stadium, like, you know, they're over, I think they averaged 34,000 for every game and whatnot. They were the champions of the league. And as far as attendance, the Hakeem Butler story is great. You know, Darius Shepard was one of the most dynamic players in the league, and he's also a Missouri guy. There was a lot of local kids there as well that made this, you know, team a lot more lovable, and with all the comebacks and everything and the wackiness. But I think that was a great story. I know, you know, a lot of people, and Rick talked about it last week, about the Ben DiNucci-ism. And, you know, I don't want to talk negative about Ben DiNucci. You know, like, he seems like a decent enough guy. But I know, Reed, you're right behind the bench. When I was at the Battlehawks game, I took, you know, some friends and my girlfriend. Did June Jones go up to him at all? In between, yeah. So I mean, that tells you something, in my opinion. So, I mean, there's a very big family aspect. Like, it seems like DiNucci's kind of like a loner in this. You know, that air quote, this league might be beneath him. You know, because when in the press conference, when he was walking up, he was like, "How many yards did I throw for?" And they were like, XYZ, and he's like, "What about rushing yards?" He's like, they were like XYZ. He's like, "All right, so I broke 300. That's all that matters." And I'm like, okay. I mean, your team just blew us out, but whatever. So
I do. It is weird. That's actually interesting that you bring it up. Just I do very different dynamics on the St. Louis, and I don't know if that's like if Becht is kind of instilling that, and he's with AJ. Hazlitt's a different coach, and he's kind of doing his own thing, and we're watching, and he kind of seems grumpy. And I know Seattle was playing with heavy hearts kind of yesterday with all the Chris Smith and everything, and they did the moment of silence for him, which was great. But it does very different dynamics between the Seattle team and between the St. Louis team. I think that's interesting.
I mean, I think there's a lot more, and this might come off as negative. Like you have DiNucci, you have Lindsay, you have Gordon, you have a couple guys who are just like their goals are clear. You know what I mean? Like I'm just doing this to get to the next level. While you have AJ, who's like, yeah, man, I could kind of just go to he had 3 NFL workouts per. I think Aaron Wilson is a guy who always posts the NFL workouts. He had I counted 3 of his workouts for NFL teams. So, I mean, like we talked about earlier in the show, like it's AJ's world. We're all just living in it as far as his next contract. So, I mean, DiNucci had a couple NFL workouts I saw last year, but in the end, he's still establishing himself and everything like that. Well, AJ's and he's talked about multiple times. I think they showed it on Player 54 is another coach. He was like, I don't want to use the word grilling Ryan Willis, but he's like, okay, if this option isn't here, this is the thing, and X, Y, and Z. And Bruce is just kind of chilling in the back, just like, yep, that's what you got to do. So I don't know. In the end, Houston got in, so that's good too. We get to see more Wade Phillips.
Well, and I have a question here for you, but yeah, Wade almost getting taken out on the sidelines. I saw that very, Hal Mummy-esque back in something with the Houston, something with the Texas sidelines, or not the Houston, but the Texas sidelines. We have a question here. Ty is talking, Beck's the player's coach. His press conferences were emotional, made me cry. What was Beck's post, kind of knowing they won, but it wasn't in their hands, and what it was up to Seattle? What was Becht like post game on the Saturday game against Orlando?
So I wasn't at the game, so everything I got was secondhand from people who were there, and I think he's a realist when it comes down to it. It's like, yeah, it's great we won. I think he knows, okay, we didn't take care of business versus Seattle. Like if they obviously beat Seattle, we're not really having this conversation. So, I mean, he's a realist. He's been in the locker room. He's been on some good teams. He's been on some bad teams. He's been around the league. These guys gravitate to him. He's an amazing, just a nice guy. I can't say anything negative about him. He first-time head coach. This is only his second coaching opportunity. The poor guy last night was feverishly eating. It was kind of they kept shining the camera on him, and he just had this look of dread. And it's not so much that, and obviously they want to win a championship, but in my mind, it was, now I can't, I'm losing this group of guys, this special group of dudes. And he's been vocal about and I know when you talked to him, he was like, yeah, if all my guys leave next year, I won as a coach, right? They all went to the NFL and all that goofy stuff. But he loves this team. He loves being a part of this team. He loves the men in this locker room. He loves all his staff. And it's kind of like your first hurrah. It's nothing will ever be as special as that first season, bringing it back, feeling the energy, all that goofy stuff.
I agree with that. And I think, and I think the hub kind of instills that as well. And we're all in that. I want to talk, because obviously we didn't see the broadcast. What were they were showing them, him and AJ or whatever. They were back in Arlington, because I saw Stoops was at the Arlington game as well. And they had, Troy Aikman in there. So what were they showing Beck during the game?
During the Arlington game, he was in the booth.
Yeah.
He was just, doing his thing. AJ was on the sideline with, I think, Mateo Durant. And they were all at a restaurant. They had a live feed on them. And he was just kind of looking. And then as the game was going over, he kind of looked a little bit more, I hate to say this, but dead inside. And the face, and they would show it after a touchdown, or they would show it when they were driving. And he just kind of looked displeased, and then you get so I started on like the third time they did it. I started looking in the background of like the other players and staff, and the energy was getting sucked out of that restaurant, and it was just, I mean, it was just unfortunate. That's the only thing you can say about it. Like, I mean, this guy, put his heart and soul into everything. AJ put his heart and soul into everything. All those guys, you have Hakeem Butler, like his journey, DMing back. You have so many different of these guys, and something that doesn't really get talked a lot is you have a lot of his guys, and Dave Bowler, the DPP. Like, those are guys that Beck has known for almost 4 years from the San Diego Fleet. So you had those guys like Donnie, the kicker, is a San Diego Fleet guy. A couple of the linemen, Tani Tupo, Travis Feeney. Like, there was a lot of retreads so Beck has known these guys for years. And then there's the Iowa State connection, like Mike Rose, Keem Butler, Willie Harvey, all these guys, Iowa State guys that he's connected to because of his son. And it's just kind of a, it's over. Like, regardless of anything, but the thing is, don't be sad that it's over, be happy that it happened, kind of like the Kirk Benkert situation,
We're seeing a lot of comments still about the playoff, and I want to talk the USFL of it all as well here, just because I think that was an interesting weekend for them. We're still seeing, we're adding 2 more teams, make sure they expand. The problem to me is I don't want it to be like the Academy Awards, where like now we have 10 Best Picture nominations and like everybody gets in, and we have the CFL where everyone, but like you have to be really terrible in the CFL not to make a playoff team. I think there needs to be something earned. I like the idea of that maybe the division winners and then 2 and 3 play, and then you do a bye week in there, but then you're still 6 of 8 teams are making the playoffs. I mean, I think this is a fine format, but I could see them working on figuring it out next year because it's I don't know. People seem displeased.
I mean, 4 teams is enough. I'll be a little bit more open to 6 teams if we obviously expand. I'm pretty anti-expansion for both these leagues because until you get like actual owners and like, all that stuff where it's like some guy in Vegas owns the Vipers. So if he wants to make his team better, he'll pay, Tom Brady $5 million, X, Y, and Z. Like let's get these people living here. Let's get these people established. Let's get like, maybe not AJ is the best example, but, let's say Gary Jennings wants to be here. Like, let's get him in St. Louis to a 4-year contract, kind of how like in the 80s, the USFL was going for it. And then we can talk expansion. In my personal opinion, I'm okay with the 10-game season. I think that, 10 games is good, regardless of if there was 1 spring league, 8 spring leagues, whatever. It's just enough because ultimately, until you can pay these guys competitive NFL wages, there's no point. Like, there's no point. Let these guys, go. Obviously, you might like Chris Smith, rest in peace, was a decent example because he was 32 years old, and if that guy can make like a practice squad salary because that's kind of where he was at in his career, great, we've accomplished that. But like the expansion talk to me, which obviously leads into a little bit of the playoff talk, is a little bit irresponsible at this point. And while it sounds great, especially with the USFL, because, they have God knows how many franchises and trademarks, it sounds good. And even to the XFL, because you can air quote bring back the Birmingham Bolts and, the LA Extreme or the LA Wildcats. It just, to me, like, let's both these leagues, let's get some continuity. Let's get some, let's prove that we're not going away in 3 years.
I agree. I think, and we've even in the chat here comments, Vegas, we got to leave. They're already selling season tickets next year in Vegas. I think we're locked into Cashman Field. Maybe they do some work on the field in the off season, but I think they're locked in there. I think you can fill that. I see people, they need to move to bigger venues in Vegas. I'm like, no, we need to fill what we have here. Max has a comment here, and then I do want to talk some USFL. We have. What did you make of the XFL players voting not to unionize this last week? They had the vote on Wednesday. I heard that some of the polling locations were switched last minute and players weren't able to get it. What do you make of them not wanting to voting thus far not to unionize?
I mean, I mean, I think right now it comes with a little bit of a. We don't know the specifics, right? So, like, for me to make a comment, anyone to make a comment on it, I think is borderline irresponsible. I will say this: that they were. It's not that they're anti-union or whatnot. It's that they didn't want a union with the steel workers. So, I mean, how many people said no? Like, how many people said no to that, but they still want a union? Yes, Andy, I don't want a San Diego franchise. Not yet. But how many people said no to the Steelworkers Union, but actually said yes to, you know, John Smith's union or the NFLPA, which was brought up a couple times. So, I mean, good on them, you know, like for making the decision of not just, I don't want to say blindly following and whatnot, but they're, you know, there's like in the NFL, you want to unionize. There are some unions that I think are great. There are some unions that I think take advantage of the situation, whatever it is. But in the end, like, you know, these guys are making informed decisions, especially a lot of these guys were in the NFL and they saw the NFLPA, like what it was and whatnot. So I don't think they're making ill-advised decisions. I don't think people ever thought about unionizing until the USFL did it. So I think that's kind of why the Steelworkers Union kind of, you know, benefited on it. But it is like, you know, we don't know the details, and for us to get up here and make like oh, they're dumb or oh, they're smart is irresponsible. Now the polling situation, that's an issue obviously, because I feel like you can just do it in the team facilities, but I mean, we don't know if that's 100% true or not. You know,
Yeah, I'm a big proponent that players are smart and kind of know what they're going to do, right? And I think that Kenneth and them came into the USFL situation last year and said, we have to fix this now. Like, we have to get what you know. And again, I'm not living in the hotels and doing all that, but they said we need to deal with this. And now, and like I said, it could be they want to figure out something different with the steelworkers or the NFLPA or whatever. But they've been through this; they know what's going on, and so I think that I would trust them at this point. Like, I would trust the players and wanting to do what they do best. Obviously, if anything comes out, we'll talk about it. But yeah, I was surprised. I mean, I just kind of, you figure, oh, they did it with the USFL, they're going to do it here, and maybe they're looking for something bigger.
And that was my general like knee jerk reaction, especially because we did see the positives of what happened to USFL and whatnot. So, you know, with Kenneth being there, it definitely, in my mind, you know, but he hasn't come out and made a statement himself. So, you know, that might tell you something about it. You know, granted, I think he just got surgery or something like that. So maybe his benefits are working pretty good right now. So he's not, you know, got anything to complain about. But I mean, until like, I'm curious to see what Kenneth has to say when he kind of gets his bearings under him and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, I reached out to Ryan, and obviously he's been on the show with Kenneth. And I think if there's things, and Ryan knows that he can, obviously, if there's messages they want to get out, they can do it with me as well. Something we're seeing still expansion talk, everything in the chat. I watched as much of the USFL this weekend as I could. Obviously, we were at the game last night, so I didn't see the Stars, you know, our team. So surprising loss to the Panthers in there. I did watch basically all of the New Jersey Generals Pittsburgh Maulers game. What, to me, like, the hub is not working right now. We had down attendance. I don't know when we're allowed to talk about the Birmingham attendance on Saturday. I saw the prelims for that. Obviously, the Breakers game, I think there were more people on the field for St. Louis than there was in the stands for the Breakers game. What are your thoughts on the USFL here week 2?
From a gameplay perspective, I mean, the Maulers are going to Mauler. I was talking to someone about like, oh, what should I do for my power rankings? You know, the Showboats obviously only scored 2 points. And I was like, well, you have to keep the Maulers last because, I mean, it's just, you know, there's continuity here of the last the last 12 games, you know, of them have been just subpar quarterback play. And you're going through the list of Kyle Lauletta, Josh Love, Vadley, Roland Rivers, now James Morgan and Troy Williams. But I mean, can we put a halt on the Brady White experience? It's 2 folds on Birmingham. I talked about it on your show. I've written about it. I think they retained like 60-something% of their roster from 2022 going into camp. Maybe it's a little less because I know they cut some guys and whatnot, but we saw how good they were last year. This shouldn't surprise anyone. Granted, the Showboats, the Brady White experience has not been a good time. And I don't know if you know this, Reed, but he went to Memphis and he coaches at Memphis. So obviously that needs him that means he needs to be the quarterback. And they gave Ryan Willis 2 series and they were moving the ball decent at one point and with Alex Collins and then kind of just died. I'm a big Vinny Papale guy, but Vinny Papale shouldn't be your number one option at wide receiver, especially when you have Osiris Mitchell. If this is surprising you about how good this Alex Magoo is, you haven't been paying attention. Like, this guy is crazy athletic. He's made plays all over the field last year when he had the opportunity. Obviously, Jamar Smith last year, did nothing to lose his job. It was an injury, just as Magoo did nothing to lose his job last year. It was an injury in week 1. But the Stallions are the team to beat, the cream of the crop. The Panthers look way better, which we've talked about in nauseum. I covered the Panthers, and it's good to kind of see everything. A lot of people, were knocking QB play in last night's game, but I'm like, it was raining pretty decently. The people were slipping. And if you look at Cookus and Josh Love, they're double clutching the football to get that additional grip on it. So that's why the routes are off. But they're making the right reads. And that's, to me, more important. And that's what I was telling someone who's a Panthers fan. Love didn't play that well. I was like, well, he's playing in the rain. He's double clutching the ball. His receivers were slipping, but he was making the correct reads. I think I saw 3 ill-advised passes from Josh Love that had nothing to do with the elements. I'm a little disappointed. The Canton game looked pretty okay during the day, for what it was. I'm very curious to see what Ford Field is like next week. Per Ticketmaster and everything, it's going to look pretty good. And also the Lions being good in the NFL kind of keeps football on people's mind in Detroit. And, they are returning and whatnot. So we'll see. The quarterback play for the Maulers has been trash. Prukup looks okay, but in the end, he wasn't a star, and he wasn't a star in the CFL, So, but he's very mid-tier, And DeAndre Johnson, my biggest thing has been okay, you're the guy now. You're going to have to throw the ball more than 10 yards. And, he's not getting his feet set. He's looking a little jittery because I watched the Maulers game pretty in depth yesterday. And it doesn't seem on Pittsburgh's side, they are so wishy-washy as far as okay, you get a series. It goes back to that mantra. If you got 2 quarterbacks, you got
no quarterback.
You got none. And I've seen some things in the chat right now talking about Canton. They should just do a Canton team. In my personal opinion, I think Canton will be a transitionary hub.
Yeah.
So they're able to get the Breakers to New Orleans. They find the spot for Pittsburgh, but they don't find the spot for Philadelphia. Philadelphia will go to Canton, and that makes as much sense to me as it can be,
I think they're discovering. I think they thought, hey, we got 17,000 whatever in there for the championship game, and we can, if we get there was not a lot of people. I think the whole hub should be in Canton, just because I think then you have the Pro Football Hall of Fame and all that. I don't know. I don't want to be the I'm already the homer. I don't want to be the homer in here, but I get a lot of comments. We've been in the chat here. Something is not working with the USFL this season, and I don't know if it is just in comparison to the XFL right now, and the games are meaning more because we're in week 10, and we have crowds, and it's a sellout in DC, and we're cutting. But something doesn't seem to work. I don't know if it's just more glaring this year than it was last year. To me, it's kind of the same. Like I said, the Maulers game yesterday, I'm like, it's 3-3 at half. It's really hard to spend my Sunday watching this game.
And it's not a good 3-3. It's not James Morgan is throwing the deep ball and the defensive back makes a great play, or they're at the goal line, and they're just just great defense. It was sloppy play. It was and even if we can talk about there were sacks here and there, but they weren't good sacks. They weren't the defensive end going for a good rip move and like putting some good skill sets together. It was the quarterback lost his first option, and it is just like, oh my God, where's the rest of the play going? So it's these guys are still high level athletes. If you're in the pocket for 6 seconds, someone's going to be in your face. I mean, what's the gap disparity between the USFL is a little bit concerning to me as far as with the play coming down. Like that really bothers me. Maybe the Showboats get it together with another team. I mean, the Gamblers showed some life this week, but I'm still not on team Kenji Bahar, like throwing 3 interceptions and whatnot. I don't know if Terry Wilson is any better, but regardless, like the gap, the disparity between some of these teams, because we can knock on Orlando, and I think Orlando gets more hate because of Terrell Buckley more than everything else, because he's kind of a living meme. But in the end, the Guardians were very fun to watch and competitive. And outside of their offensive line play, which is the biggest thing, they had decent quarterback play with like Paxton Lynch. Quinn Dormandy put up some good games. Like even this Saturday, he had a good game. He regressed for 2 weeks, came back. And we're not getting that with the Maulers, and I know there's like Twitter debates of like who would win, the Maulers or the Guardians. I'm like, the Guardians. Like,
yes, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, like they would just, their receivers are so much better, and Reuben Foster has been playing pretty good, and Boogie Roberts has been doing pretty decent as well. Boogie Roberts actually looks way better this year, than he did last year. And it's like, those are only 2 players, dudes. Like,
we have a tie here, and I noticed this early on with the XFL that it did seem like, and I don't know if it's just ESPN, if it has a wider reach, or we know that Fox, we're protecting the USFL, like we can control everything, but it does seem like I'm seeing many more viral, everyone's sharing stuff from the XFL than the USFL. Do you disagree? Agree? What do you think?
I mean, what do you expect though? Like ESPN, air quote, the worldwide leader in sports. Like, I mean, you're going to share these videos, and more people, I think, follow ESPN or NFL on ESPN than they do with Fox and whatnot. But I mean, that remains to be seen, because now we're in I feel like it's not fair to talk about this, because now we have 10 weeks of stories, players, like maybe it's shame on us because we didn't do our due diligence to like really keep track on this for the first week, 2 and 3, or 1, 2, and 3 weeks, because of like what were the analytics of that, right? So like, now everyone's like, okay, the XFL is around right now, that's great. Oh, there's another football league, the USFL. So it's like,
I don't see anyone, but I don't see anybody talking about the USFL.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they will until the XFL is over.
Because but then is it? I mean, does a 3-3 half game suddenly become more watchable without the XFL? Like, that's my question. It's like, we had Andrew Buckles on last week from Awful Announcing. We're talking like, okay, does the USFL get a 30% bump here after the XFL goes up there? I don't know, because like that was a horrendous game yesterday at Canton. Like, it was, we spent 5 minutes. We're talking with Dakota Prukop's wife in the stands. I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, I don't know if that becomes more watchable when the XFL goes away.
I mean, I have no idea. I mean, I think I've said it in the group chat, like week 5 will be the biggest indicator of where this league goes. Like, you should get a bump, right? Like, just by like attrition, like even if, the games are on at the same time, whatever, but you should get a bump at least a couple hundreds of thousands of people, like just because they're like, well, football's on. Because I mean, that's who you're catering to, right? You're catering to the dude, or the dude who's going to the bar, after working and building his roof, and you're like, I'm going to take my girlfriend, my wife out to dinner, and we're going to watch this game. Like, that's really who you're catering to. You're not catering to like us on Twitter because we're gonna watch no matter what because it's air quote our job and like we're supposed to and like we need to know what's going on. So it's like how are they going to attract the casual viewer? And that's the challenge for both leagues, right? That's the challenge for like any sport, coming in the mainstream. But honestly, like I have no idea. I don't think the USFL is going anywhere. I think Fox has a 5-year plan that they're ready to go to war with, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, no, they need to figure something out as far as with this quarterback play and whatnot, and the cannibalization of the ratings and whatnot, because they're going to have to deal with this every year for 3-4 weeks.
Well, to me, it hurts. It hurts the momentum getting off, right? Because I don't think, I don't. Like you said, I think we're going to see some growth, but I don't think it's just going to spike overnight with the XFL. Max has a comment here, and then JJ, I've started a comment we want to talk about. I think the USFL execs expected the interest in the league to be more what it was in the early weeks instead of it looks like the interest was about where it was at the end of last season. Yeah, I don't see there was nothing in the USFL offseason save for a meaningless college draft. I'm sorry that like did anything, okay, we relocated the Showboats 6 months ago. Okay, we're doing that. Like there was nothing that you're ever going to get that spike again going into year 2.
Yeah, I mean, what is their goal? Like what is the reality for them? Like what numbers are they like, okay, this is good, this is sustainable? Like are they going to be banking on more like Cavante Turpins, like, to kind of promote it? Are they going to be looking for investors like the Fred Smith of Memphis? Are they going like what is their business model? Because I could throw that question at the XFL as well, like what is the goal? Like what is okay to them? Like do they want to pay these guys at some point $3 million a year? Do they want to continue the path they're on? Are they, is The Rock going to just keep putting out Black Adam movies to like fund this? You know what I mean? Like he's like, oh man, like, okay, we're going into the red. Yeah, I guess I'll make Moana too. You know what I mean? Like that is like, there's not a set of goals in my opinion, other than like, excuse me, there's a set of goals, but like, what is the expectation? What is your actual like, okay, we need to make X amount of dollars. We need to put X amount of people in the stands. Like obviously, and I asked this question and I didn't get an answer. Was like, what is the expectation for the non-hub teams? Like, and like, are you factoring that into your budgets? Or are you just kind of like, hey man, we get 2,000 people, like that's a win. If we can get like a little bit more transparency on that, like, are you good with not caring about any of these other teams? Like, are we riding and dying on the Stallions, the Showboats, and the Panthers? And that's a very concerning thing for me right now.
Well, and we'll see Detroit next week, and I think Detroit's going to show up. But Canton did not look good. Memphis looked good last week. I think the numbers were inflated. I do not think there was 30,000 people there. I'm sorry, Kurt Menefee. But Birmingham looked really bad. And I go, so wait, like, and I know it's Birmingham, and I know it's a smaller city, but like, that is your hub. That is, if anybody in the world knows the USFL exists, is the people in Birmingham. You have the champions here, the season 1 champions, like the rate. That was a very poor crowd Saturday night, and I know that. Was it Shania Twain or something was playing down the way? Like, and there was a rodeo, and there was a garage sale, and there was a new gas station opening. But like, at some point, like, I just don't understand. Like, that's your hub, like that's your base. If you can't fill Birmingham, I think you got a problem.
Yeah, and like, I just want to know if they're okay with that. Yep. Like, if you're good with that, like if you're like, we do not care about attendance. We are making our money and we are paying our coaches and we were doing X and we were doing Y and all the checks are going through. That's fine. Like, I don't care. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you are okay with that, but like, what is the goal? And that's a little bit like a little bit skittish to me on like where we're at moving forward, because while I do think the XFL doesn't have the most, transparent goal. I think this is a little, there's a little bit of showmanship on some aspects. They are still in their cities, while attendance in some places aren't, I think St. Louis has messed up the attendance metric of like, maybe if St. Louis didn't exist and you told me 15,000 people went to the Sea Dragons, a spring football game in Seattle, 15,000 people, I'd be like, oh, that's really good. And now you're like, well, St. Louis had 33,000. And you're like, well, Seattle is better than St. Louis. Like, shouldn't they have more? You know what I mean? Like, the St. Louis thing has messed up my metric of what is a good attendance for a spring football game, especially going there too. I don't have the appropriate answer.
Well, and like I said, we'll see when the USFL ratings come out tomorrow, because that's the thing is that we don't care about attendance, we only care about ratings, and ratings were down over last year, and they were down last week, and I don't care whatever Fox PR wants to spin a 4% increase, like ratings were down, and that whatever you did it to yourself, you have the simulcast and everything else, and that's whatever else last year, but I'll see. I think ratings tomorrow are going to be very, very interesting.
And the 4% thing kind of irks me, right? Because we'll put it into like two different perspectives in my mind. If I told you I was a running back and I had 1,500 yards my first season, and my second season I had 2,000 yards, but we played 6 more games, was I a better running back? You know what I mean? You're robbing Peter. It was a robbing Peter to pay Paul type thing. Like, in my mind, I think it's better if let's say, so they hit 740, right? And like what it was like 740 was the average. If my whole metric was like between 850 and 670, I'm way better with that than, okay, we had 4 million and then 26 people watched that. Like, yeah, we're up 4%. Yeah, but like the disparity is not where you should be. Like, I would rather be within 100,000 of that 700 and like of that 700 average, where like, okay, we're retaining a good base. You can do a decent job if you got 700,000 people watching every game. Like a true average rather than like 4 million to 1,000 type thing. Like that to me is like, because now you're just like, you're grabbing your eyeballs, but you're not keeping them. And that's where I kind of am like, okay, like, yeah, 4% raise, but why wasn't anyone watching other products? So, because honestly, the Maulers are like, and granted, it's not a coach in the sidelines, or excuse me, behind the scenes, it's probably a coaching thing with schemes, but it's not a coaching thing as far as like, these guys are jokes of men. Like, this is a respectable group of men doing a good job trying to do, and like, there's not the outside nonsense of what we saw with the Maulers last year of like Kirby Wilson, like benching badly for no reason. Like, it just, some of these guys aren't as good as the other guys. And like, that's football, that's sports, but like it's not fun to watch.
The USFL has not. I thought the Showboats game last week, I felt the same as last year. I thought the kickoff was good energy, and then it's just something missing there. Like I said, I don't always like the XFL's personality, and I think that they carry themselves too seriously, or they do whatever sometimes. But to me, the USFL has no personality, and we have Jace Collinsworth there that kind of sounds like Chris. We're watching, and we got what was his name, Michael. A Seahawk guy, the Mike Dredd.
Mike Robinson.
Yeah, and like Mike, I didn't think he was great last year. I don't know if he's any better this year. Like, it just feels, I don't know, something feels awry there, and maybe it's just because the XFL games meant more this weekend. But oh yeah, JJ's reminding me. And then we'll get out of here pretty soon in an hour. He wants to know who has the better quarterbacks, because this will curtail back into, because I want to talk about Ben DiNucci again before we get out of here. USFL or XFL, who has the better quarterbacks?
Right now it's the XFL. Like there's two metrics. So this, people are going to poo-poo me for this, and that's fine, because obviously I don't know ball, but I mean, I cover, when I do, like, I have spreadsheets. I have way more spreadsheets about this stuff than I care to admit. But when I cover like the XFL quarterbacks, the USFL quarterbacks, and if you guys don't know, I cover the quarterback rankings on my YouTube channel, Analyze and Educate. But there's two factors. I throw this in there. I throw in pass attempts at the NFL, and I throw in income earned at the NFL. And then last year, the USFL going into season one had, I think, $18 million earned, like all their guys. This year it was like 6. Now, I didn't factor in MBT's like income from the CFL, and I didn't factor in Prukop's income from the CFL. So you're like, okay, maybe that's a little bit closer or whatever. The XFL had like, I think, $38 million earned by their quarterbacks. And like it was inflated because of AJ and Paxton Lynch. Okay, they accounted for like 28. And then you had, Benker, even Luis Perez had a decent amount. Slaughter's got like $2 million. Plitz got a little bit of signing bonus money. Go down the list. So there's definitely and then people might combat me with like, okay, that doesn't matter. Well, to an extent it does, because now you have guys that even if you're the fourth string in training camp, you're still there. Especially if some of these guys are around, like being like Reed Sinnett was around Tom Brady, he was around Mike McDaniel, he was around, Jalen Hurts, Carson. I think he was there with Carson Wentz. But if not, he's been around quarterbacks to learn from these guys and like be in these systems, and like that stuff matters. And yeah, Max, I think Danucci's like in the almost 2 million. Because he did play it 3 years and active, but stay on track. Like that stuff matters. Like, outside of, in my mind, you have Carson Strong, cup of tea. James Morgan's been around a couple teams. Obviously, Case Cookus has been like on 6 different teams, including a CFL team. But like MBT is the class of the class there. Like between him and Alex Magoo, I think is one of the top earners as well. Like we love Jamar Smith, but he had 15 minutes with the Patriots and then another 20 minutes with the Ticats. Like the NFL experience, even if they're just like going to be camp bodies, they're still running the scout team, and that matters to me. And, the more practice squads, the more training camps, the more preseason games you're a part of, all that stuff matters in the long run of the quarterback play, especially now because some of these 3 and 4 year guys are 2020 UDFAs, they didn't get a real training camp. They didn't get real workouts because of COVID and everything like that. So now it's like they're all, a year behind, and not just for quarterbacks, but everyone. So short answer to the XFL.
Joe's like, he says, Perez, Danucci, McCarron, Tamu, and then there's a big drop off. That's half of the quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, there's man, only half of the league, only half of the league has good quarterbacks. Yeah, well, have you heard of the NFL? Like, have you seen week 15 to week 18 in the NFL? And this is another rant. 68 guys started last year at the quarterback position in the NFL. That was more than COVID year when they were like, oh, you saw someone who you thought had COVID? Yeah, man, you're out for a week. Like there wasn't any COVID reserve really last year. You had illness, whatever. So all that nonsense, like these leagues need to be around to be like, Teamu might go from like the third string to, fourth string to the Heineke situation. Granted, the COVID thing kind of maybe regress that, but these guys are getting hurt, and there's a lot of controversy as far as like what's going on with the practices and like, are they, should they go harder in practice? Because when they go to the games, their bodies aren't ready. That's not my job to care about, like from a media standpoint. But in the end, like they, half the league is good quarterbacks. Like that's not a bad number. Like no matter what league it is.
Max is here. Interesting. Some of the guys that passed on the XFL to go to the USFL, and then, still are. Ask Ryan Willis about that.
I mean, Max, like, and I'd like your feedback on this. To be fair, Akil Glass and Davis Cheek did have a good chance of starting because Zach Smith was there, and then this, like he follows it up. Like MBT comes to New Orleans, like. Who are you going to bench? Like Akil, are you going to bench MBT over Akil Glass? And and Davis Cheek. It kind of sucks because this is kind of a redshirt year for them as long as MBT stays healthy. But he's put together 2 good games. In my mind, he's a top 2 quarterback in the league. Magoo is playing out of his mind. Josh Love, playing really well. Prue Cup is that kind of that line of demarcation. Like if your quarterback is worse than Prue Cup, you would bench him. If he's better, then you're good type thing. So.
My boy Chris here checking in, section 135 over in Seattle. Chris enjoying that. I want to talk about the playoffs before we get out of here. We're talking, can XFL players go right to the USFL? They're under contract, right? They're under contract till the end of the year.
Now, if we give a shameless plug, by Mike Mitchell on Twitter, we'll be able to answer all those questions because, like the playoff scenario, when Mike's talked about it, was it on your show that they were talking about it? I believe, like the release of the contracts and whatnot. I've seen it.
Yeah, it's this whole the contracts and who's with the USFL and how many years in the XFL. But it's my understanding that both leagues it's out for the NFL and that is it, right?
Yeah. So I know there are players who are trying to figure it out, but I think that would be a pretty cool thing to see, these guys bounce between the XFL and the USFL just to one, obviously, more if they're signing you to the USFL, they think you can help their team. So that would raise the competition level. And that's not an XFL versus USFL war. Don't take it as that. That's just reality. If a coach wants to sign any player, it's because they think they will help the team. Don't get on your high horse about that, Twitter. But I'd like to see it, if especially guys who are that third string receiver, who put up some numbers, let's see what they can do. But yeah.
I have a thing here, Max, is, and I didn't want to make a big deal about this, but Chairwoman Danny Garcia of the XFL does now follow me and Mike Mitchell on Twitter. I was first, just throwing that out there. I was first, but I will say, and then Mike pointed out, so Mike Mitchell got mentioned by XFL today, and this rounds out kind of my comment here is I do, and this is my hope. I think, we're getting through XFL and I've talked with people at the league and even doing stuff with Dean last week and we're getting through everything now. My hope is now we're getting through this, we can start engaging a little bit more with, the content creators, with people, like this. Mike's a reporter. That's no different than NFL Network, showing, or ESPN showing Schefter's tweet and so got, traded to the Ravens or whatever. Mike is a reporter. Mike covers the league. I think it's phenomenal. It makes you feel bigger than it is when you're able to show other people, and what that does is that builds up. Mike, show there's all positives there. What did you make of that? And Mike, his playoff scenario is getting talked about on XFL today.
If you don't know who Mike Mitchell at this point is, and unless I'm not gonna harass you, you don't know what the New Orleans Breakers are, but if you don't know who Mike Mitchell is, in reality, obviously by Mike Mitchell at Twitter, he's so plugged into this. I think he's admitted he's so old that he was covering the AFL in the 60s. But no, he's been an OG USFL guy, covered the XFL 1.0, UFL, probably the spring league. The amount of work he does, good work, and this is going to sound a little, bland, but the amount of good work he does to not just to get the information out, but for the leagues, for the players, for the coaches, this guy's in it, and I hate to, sometimes we take advantage of it, because it's well, I don't need to know this because Mike does, right? Mike will figure it out, but the amount of
that Mike,
I'm drinking a rain beer. Everyone go to Mike Mitchell about questions tonight. But he's and he's a no BS type of guy, and these are the facts. Deal with it. If you can't deal with it, that's a you problem. Yeah, Mike Mitchell is the Adam Schefter of spring football, and something that gets lost in it is his love for the CFL.
And the USFL.
Yeah. What's up?
And the USFL. Mike knows all the leagues.
Yeah, Mike is in a euphoric, pleasure zone with all this going on. So, I mean, it's a great thing to see, but I mean, we're off tangent. Yeah, no, it would be cool. Because I've been very, not to come off as selfish, but like I've been tracking a lot of the quarterback records, and there was no mention of that outside of the one tweet that you sent me from Bleacher Report, and then Pro Football Talk wrote a story about AJ McCarron, but they don't mention Ben DiNucci in it. Like Ben DiNucci broke Tommy Maddox's yards record. So it's kind of like, I know you saw my tweet. Like it was like almost like 30,000 impressions. Just because you saw the AJ one, did you actually do the research and look it up? Like that's an issue I have. Like, Ben DiNucci is still an air quotes sexy name. Like you couldn't even like look up his like thing. Like it literally takes like it took me 10 minutes to like put the correlation, like, oh, he's throwing for a lot of yards. Like, and I have the whole list of like active quarterbacks and like the passing rankings since post 2000, especially with the USFL now. I'm getting ready to write articles about this. But for the 8 franchises, I'm going to do like a quarterback spotlight from the 80s.
I just thought that was a funny comment. And not according to 4 or 5 USFL trolls on Twitter. They all think Mike Mitchell is anti-USFL. There's no changing their minds.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't want to come off as like borderline harassing people, but like, stop.
It's crazy.
You guys need to stop, because like in the end, you're gonna like find someone who like, I don't know, knows how to use the internet and has access to like.
My thing was this. It was yesterday, and we'll get out of here soon, I promise. You had someone tweeting about the USFL, like why are the Breakers, like why are they not in New Orleans, like what's going on? And you could have had someone go on there, go, oh hey, this is the new league, and like it's Fox, and they're trying to save money, and they're working towards that, and we have expansion. Instead, you have a bunch of people mansplaining in the comments, like, what do you even know, bro? Get out of here. I'm like, I would, and then if I was that guy, I'm like, I would never watch the USFL ever again. Thank you very much for saving my time on that.
If I was that guy, I would, to be so petty, depending on how much time he has, I would go to whatever street he lives on. So he's in New Orleans, so downtown Bourbon Street, and I would go to every bar and I would turn on the XFL on every bar. Hey, I will give you $10 if you put this game on. Just don't change it, to inflate the ratings, just to be that petty. Because I have definitely done that last year, where we were at some vacation place, and I went to like 7 bars and just turned on the USFL on every channel, and it had different, like, I was definitely boosting views, and I was like, for the brand.
It's like when you used to go in like the Apple store and like subscribe to people's YouTube channels or whatever, go down all the phones and that. I have a question here. Need a lot more Saturday Pro Football, and then we'll get out of here soon. XFL had a very, very successful season. Disney Network backing, making lots of TV money, kept the teams closer. Travel. Your thoughts? I mean, I think XFL's got to be thrilled right now. I think they got to be thrilled. We're going to do the championship game. DC sold out. I hope they sell out this week. I think tickets look pretty good for that. I don't know Houston. I think that's going to be tougher, but I think they'll have a good showing there. Like, grade the XFL here going into the playoff games.
Man, I would say a B. Like, like to give it an A would be excusing some of the blindness. I think in the early part we had some issues, especially like one thing I do like about the USFL is their transactions are very transparent. It's just on Twitter. Like, how were we finding out players were announcing they were getting signed, or like, scrolling through the transaction page? Like, that training camp period was very frustrating for me as far as doing cuts and everything like that. There was some, the Cashman Field thing. The Cashman Field is not a positive in my mind. I'm a little skeeved by this playoff thing, because I think, and this is me taking my bias as a St. Louis guy out of it. It could, coming out of your cave there, UBL. But I'm a little skeeved by it. I just wish there was a little bit more like transparency, and just because they didn't know, what was going on, as far, it was a very fluid situation. Something I think they could have did a little bit more is embracing kind of the 2001 numbers. I get like the connotation, but like no one has a problem with Tommy Maddox from the XFL in 2001 or like Jeff Brom or whatever. Like they have a problem with Vince and NBC, and that's fine. But like, a little bit of the Vegas correlation for, the Outlaws and He Hate Me, I thought would have been cool. That's something. And like, that is one of my favorite things about like the USFL is like now that like they got all the lawsuits behind them, like they brought some of the Stallions back for week 1. Like, I think it's cool that like now there's like fluidity, and I would have liked to see that with the 2001, like AJ McCarron just threw more touchdowns than Tommy Maddox did and all that stuff. Like that would have been cool to me. And I don't know what the reasoning is. It's not as public as like the lawsuit was with like the 80s USFL to like 2022, but like incorporating some more 2001 stuff would have been cool.
Yeah, I know we had Paul Reitz on last week. He's the USFL historian over at Our Sports Central. I don't like that doesn't do a lot for me, seeing like the Herschel Walker highlights on the USFL Twitter or whatever, but it's fine. I mean, it is what it is. Like when they come out and say, this is the first touchdown in Memphis for the USFL, like in 40 years, but I didn't live through that time. So maybe if I lived through that time, I would be a lot more excited about that.
I like it from a historical, like statistical point of view. And I think, so like right now, obviously they played more games in the 80s in the USFL, right? Like they played, 18 game seasons times 3, 36, 54 games, right? So it would take our quarterbacks 5 years to get to that point. But like how cool, you put the graphic of, Chuck Fuchina, who is the Baltimore Stars guy, against Case Cookus if he were the career passing, like, because now in my opinion it shows like fluidity and transparency and whatnot, and not transparency, it shows like length and culture of it, because now it's like, well, it's not season, because I hate when they say season 2, like it's not a TV show, it's the 2023 season. I think XFL 3.0 is appropriate because there's been breaks and iterations and changes, but it's not season 2. Like I find that really cringe, especially with the lawsuit done. This is the 5th season of the USFL. Like I get it, but it's a big accomplishment to have a spring football league, but like, don't be doing the meme where like you're in 3rd place losing, when the 1st place, 2nd place. Like I don't like, guys, like the season 2 thing is just too cringe for me. The 2023 was like, I never refer to it as season 2 in my articles. Like going into the 2023 season, as we look to the 2023 season, like established, you guys are established, do it, act like it.
I see. I completely disagree. That's really funny. I don't think Brian Woods would be a friend of the show. I don't think Brian Woods buying some old trademarks entitles them to that. I don't. And I whatever. I don't know if that's a controversial take or not, but I would much rather the USFL just do its own thing right now. And I'm probably wrong, and everyone's watching for nostalgia, but to me, it's been messy from the start. It hinders it. It gets convoluted and all of that. And like, I don't care about the Memphis Showboats. Like you could call them anything and play them. Like I don't care. But again, I did not live through that time, so I'm probably not the one to ask.
But do you agree with me as far as like the continuity, as far as like the branding of like Case Cook is all-time leader in passing yards for the Stars?
No, I don't. I think USFL, this is its own thing. I do. Okay. I think, and probably the XFL as well. It's different. Like it's totally different. It's like staff and what was the level of talent back then, and they played all these different games rules. Like I know you're the stat guy, and I don't want to crush your dreams on all this. But I have a hard time of like. I think it's its own thing. I think it's there. I think they should be completely separate. But I certainly appreciate the history of it and everyone that you're doing. Maybe I'm. Tell me in the chat. Am I wrong? Jared says USFL series finale coming.
Jesus, God forbid, man. Like I hope both these leagues last for until I don't feel like covering football anymore, man. Like that's the thing too. Is like I know some guys, not players but coaches, who they coach. The height, like Jonathan Heimbach is a perfect example. You know what I mean? Like he does his own thing in the fall, coaches 4 months, and then he's like And then he's like, dude, I just made 150 grand this year. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what the coaches get paid in the XFL or USFL. Obviously not 150 grand, but it's a good side hustle for them to, you know, continue to do what they love. But, you know, like it's a good side hustle to what they do and, you know, supplement their income and continue to do what they love. Like being an NFL coach has a lot of demands. Like you could still be a pro coach and see these dudes, you know, continue to, you know, progress and, you know, like, you know, Beck is going to be on the sidelines watching his son play or doing the Jets radio next, you know, so he's got the best of both worlds. And, you know, Mike Riley gets to bring his kid to be on the sidelines or his grandson, which I think is kind of cool. Like a lot of people think that's lame, but my dad was a firefighter and he used to take me to work. So take that for what it's worth.
Well, that might be more exciting than going to sit at Canton and freezing the cold.
Yeah, it's warmer. It's definitely warmer.
Yeah, I did like that. We had Dakota Prukop's pregnant wife sitting out there in the freezing cold in Canton. I did like that.
If the other league did that, someone would be very vocal about, you know, Danny Garcia hating women.
Yeah, well, this is kind of my thing here. And a lot of football. You're right. To compare the '80s big money, like it's not cringe, but like yeah, they're paying. It's just it's the economy of scale and everything. It's totally different.
But you had independent owners. So if I bought the Showboats and my budget was $11 million, I could go to whatever player's house and be like, I will give you $10 million, play for me. And, you know, he'd probably say, yeah, because one, I am awesome. And two, like, you know, I'm giving him $10 million. Like they could, like all those teams are independently owned. You know, it was haves and have-nots for the league in the 80s.
I think we're mixed in it. Sure. I think some are saying we should talk, you know, some are saying it should, it didn't. I think it's good. All right. We're going to get out of here soon. Pat, do my Seattle Sea Dragons, do we have a chance against DC this weekend?
I mean, of course you do. You're in the Northern Division playoffs. You know what I mean? I mean, you can't count out any of these teams. Obviously, any given Sunday type thing. I'm slightly. This is going to sound weird. I'm more intrigued to see the Renegades Roughnecks game because I want to see the Luis Perez offense in full force and obviously Brandon starting. But I might I don't want to say turn that game off. Like it'll be on, but I might tune out of that game from an actually watching it after the first quarter to where the Sea Dragons game, I'm going to be like in depth the whole time. Like I'm, you know, just because it's, you know, there's a little bit of probably not really on my end, but the league's end animosity towards the Sea Dragons right now. Like the Defenders, obviously cream of the crop. But, you know, we know that it's going to be sold out. And, you know, how's Te'amu going to do? Like, you know, like they just released Raquel Armstead, their backup running back. So I'm very curious to see what's going on with that. I mean, DiNucci's hitting his stride. You know, Abram Smith has, like, I think in week 8, he was at 717 yards. I think he finished the year in like, you know, 760 or something, still the leading rusher of the league, but like he had 3 opportunities, you know, kind of average at 100 yards a game and go for 1,000. So very curious to see what they got going on. They've expanded De'Ara King's role a little bit. So that's kind of cool, but are they going to ride and die with Te'amu?
Yeah, I think they go back to Te'amu. I think that's.
Yeah, I mean, you have to. And the gentleman, Benjamin Turek, put it up as well. It's like it's really hard to beat a team 3 times in a row. Like that's the comment right there for me. Like you know, yeah, it's like eventually, you know, and I was talking to someone like about that during the year. It's like, yeah, you want to lose that second game like in the season because, you know, if you're going to play them in the playoffs, you want to see what you did wrong and everything like that. So that's my opinion. It might not be unpopular, but then like, what do you get better at? You know, you learn more from a loss than you do from a win.
Well, we're gonna get out of here. I appreciate Pat spending over the hour today here on here. I appreciate it. I will be in DC for the championship game. I'm flying in Saturday. If I'm staying near the stadium, so if people are around or we can hang out Sunday, whatever. But hit me up on Twitter. I'll be sitting at the bar somewhere drinking, probably watching the Saturday night game, and then yeah, I should be in. That should be good. Be able to watch the Saturday night game and then be there for Sunday. So say hi, Pat. Obviously check out Pat's YouTube. Pat, analyze and educate. Just a lot more like real football talk. I mean, I think we always do a little bit more of the business of football on here. And Pat, anything else you want to say about your YouTube channel?
No, I'm doing my quarterback rankings. That's kind of my big thing. I have some interviews that I'm doing as well. And I did an interview with Clint Sig of the Gamblers, Mike Glass of the of the Alouettes, and then Terry Myrick of the Panthers. I got some guests lined up for after the season. Nothing. My thing is I like to be in person, with them. So, that's kind of my thing. Pop a Zin in, and then just kind of go with these guys. Because obviously I'm sponsored by Zin. But yeah, I got some interviews coming up, quarterback rankings coming out tomorrow for the USFL and XFL. And then you can find me on NFL QB Talk, which is ironic at this point.
You might need a new handle, Pat. You might need a new handle at this point.
I do. I honestly, I don't know how to change it.
We just change it to like Bearded Pat or something. I think you get a lot more traction if it was. I think you should change your handle at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I think I need to. I don't know. We can make a poll and see it get hijacked. But yeah, I mean, NFL QB Talk as of today, and analyze and educate for the YouTube. So as always, Reed, thank you for having me come on the show. Andy is obviously doing God's work out there.
Yeah, I guess I didn't preface that off the top. I'm so sorry. Yeah. Andy traveling. I'm horrible. I was too tired this morning. I was very tired after we had many rain years yesterday at the game. But Andy, my partner in crime for our show, I feel so terrible now. I didn't start the show with that. Andy, my partner in crime, is traveling. Andy, I think, was doing some bachelor parties down in Arizona and now is headed to Japan. Andy will be back for the championship game. We will be live in San Antonio. Still figuring out the location for that, but we will be doing that. Make sure you like and subscribe. Hit the like button on this. Giving away, at this point, 2 tickets maybe to the USFL championship game. Didn't quite hit the 3,500 in the XFL season, but whenever that comes about, you'll get 2 tickets of your choice. So appreciate everyone's support with that. We will get out of here. And yeah, it should be good games next weekend. So we'll see you guys soon.